The Cetacean Acoustic Trend Tracking Project, CAT, uses Chelonia FPOD passive acoustic monitoring devices to track dolphin and porpoise population and distribution trends around the UK coastline. Hello, we're going to do a video on exporting today. So this is for people working on the CAT project doing citizen science who have some data and aren't terribly familiar with the FPOD app, and we're just going to go through some simple exporting into Excel. There's quite a lot we can do in Excel that is quite useful. So I'm going to just start up the app here, leave everything on defaults, not change anything. Just going to open a file set, open up an Isles of Scilly file, fit the whole time range on screen, and show from start. So this is quite a nice file. It's about 6 months of data. It was from the north shore of St Martin, so it's on the Atlantic side of the Isles of Scilly, so it's quite open water there. It was fairly quiet. It was in about 60 meters of water on a Fish Intel acoustic release serviced by the Isles of Scilly IFCA. So it was a very nice site, and we can see in the raw data at the bottom there that it goes from about the 10th of June all the way through to about the about the 10th of December. So that's a long file, but we can see that temperature line there is very steady, very stable. It doesn't drop off much as we get from June to December. We can see some tidal patterns here. You can see there's probably some spring tides in there, maybe when some storms blew through. We can also see from the dolphin detections here in the orange that there were very few in June. They picked up significantly through October, November, and there were a lot more in December through those winter months than there were in the summer. Now what I would generally do with a file when I first get it like this is to pick one species at a time. So we're looking at other cetaceans now, and then I would go to the export tab, and I would maybe start off with detection positive minutes, and I would do that per day, and I would take it from file 2, which is an FP3, and then I would export from that file. That's very quick and easy to do, and it will drop it in the results tab, and I don't really do much with it in there. And I would cut it to the clipboard, open Excel. Let me put Excel on the screen, we can see. There we go, open Excel and drop it in there, and I would open those out so we can see what they all are. So we've got the file name in the first column there, the pod number in the next column there. This one called chunk end is actually date. Now these minutes and minutes on, these are minutes as calculated by a computer. 1440 is the minutes there are in a day. I won't worry too much about these. It's how the computer calculates it. So if I were to make that equal to the minutes divided by 1440, and then I change that format to date, that's giving me the 11th of the 6th, which is the same as that. So it's just a different way of calculating the dates. We were extracting dolphins, so I'm going to put dol in there, and then it's quite easy just to block in the date and the dolphins, and then I can insert a simple 2D column, and quite quickly and easily I've got a nice chart there showing me the dolphin activity day by day through that period. Now what I look for in here is possibly data saturation. And there are 1440 minutes in a day, and we're looking at detection positive minutes here. So if my detections are getting above about a third of the range, I'd be worried that I might be getting some data saturation here. So what I will do for comparison, I will open another tab in there, go back to the software, back into export, and this time, rather than I can have detection positive hours, if I have very few detections, detection positive minutes looks like it might have been saturating, so I can go for number of clicks per day from file 2, export that. So it's still per day, but the numbers will be much higher because we're looking at actual numbers of clicks. So I'm going to cut that again to the clipboard, drop it in that window there. We can look at the same thing. So again, chunk end would be date. Number of clicks will be clicks rather than a time. So if I do date and clicks, and then I insert a 2D graph there, it gives us a bit more clarity, range and detail. So if I compare that, so there's my clicks graph and there's my detection positive minutes graph. So it looks to be saturating up here a bit, so I think I'm losing a bit of detail, and if we compare that with clicks, we can see a more peaks and troughs here. So that suggests it was saturating a bit, and I'm getting a bit more detail. It's not terribly noticeable on that one. It can be quite noticeable, so I'll lose the clicks. We'll stick with the detection positive minutes. I'm actually going to delete that graph so I can see my data. Then I'll go back into here. We did that for other cetaceans, so I'm going to switch that off. I'm going to do it again for narrowband high frequency porpoises. Go back to detection positive minutes per day from file 2, drop that onto my clipboard, and then I can cut that into my Excel spreadsheet. I'm going to drop it over here because we're only actually interested in that one column there, detection positive minutes for porpoises. What I like to do is copy that just before the dolphin one. And the only reason for doing that is to get the color coding right, because by default when I graph those 3 columns, Excel will use the same colors that the FPOD-exe software uses. I don't know if Nick Tregenza was aware of that when he made the software, but that duplicates the orange for the dolphins and the purple for the porpoises. So I can overlay the dolphins and porpoises there, so I can see any signs of variation or sort of synchronicity. And in busy areas like harbours, you could do the same thing with the boat sonar. Another thing I do for people, let me quickly show you that, is the water temperature, because we take that every minute. So if I come back to my software, the other thing I can export is detections and environment. Again, per day from file 2, export that data. That will drop that in the results tab. Quickly check, plenty of data there. Cut that to the clipboard and drop that into Excel. And let me just open up those fields so we can see what we've got. We don't need that first column, that's just the file name. So I can see we've got the pod number. Chunk end again is the date. The minute we don't really need, and the minute's on, but we have taken midnight. You can see from the timestamp there, 23:59. That was the temperature taken at midnight. We do actually take the temperature every minute, so we can track the temperature very accurately. The angle of the pod, this is the angle from vertical. We have an accelerometer in there that will measure the angle, so we can see it goes up to almost 10, I go 11 or 12 here, and right down to 3 or 4. So we can see the pod waving around in the water. We can see the detection positive minutes per day for NVHF, total number of clicks for NVHF, and we can see the same there for dolphins, and we can see the same there for sonar. And we can see the number of all clicks per minute measured in that day. We can see the sonar risk, and we can see sediment noise. We can get some quite nice statistics just from that one simple export there. That's a really nice one, and there are some people I regularly just export the temperature for them and send it off. They're monitoring things like fish breeding habits in the estuaries and around the coastal waters, and they're just interested in the variation of temperature over the year. In some places, like around the Fowl, I did several years or a couple of years altogether just looking at the temperature and the detections. And they're did seem to be a correlation. When the temperature goes down, the detections were going up. We did theorize that possibly the temperature going down meant that the oceanic water was coming in, carrying nutrients and fish, and then that's when the cetaceans were coming in and feeding on them. The export tab is a really useful one, and as you get more into the data, I think you will use that more and more. It's by far the easiest way of looking at a month at a time. So if I go back into the Excel here, we can see we've got the dates there. So 10th of the 6th, I could do 10th of the 6th, 10th of the 7th, so I could just graph that bit and then do the same thing. So I could get 30-day blocks, and I could graph them and then compare them as the year rolls along and see how the activity changes over time. A nice way to quickly get some good statistics out. We won't go into too much detail about the other things you can do in here, as with in all cases with FPOD-XE, layers and layers of complexity. But export, one that I recommend you learn. It will be very useful to you. So to summarize, we exported detection positive minutes, we exported the number of clicks, and we graphed that in Excel, and then we overlaid the graphs in Excel to look for any displacement activity, and then we exported detection and environment. This is where we see the temperature and the angle of the pod in the water. All of the data gathered on the CAT project is open source at the Figshare Plus open repository in the project called CAT. The software we use to analyse the data is available at the chelonia.co.uk website called FPOD-XE. RDUK was established to set up the CAT project on behalf of Chelonia.